So I looked for an alternative, and I found a number of different products and programs that we can actually help the small business owner benefit from with no load, no upfront cost, and they actually only pay when they get performance. That was a much more viable solution because there is no risk to the small business. If we have a program that fits, they can benefit from it before they take any burden, either financially or time-wise. So that's what we've done now. We've created a portfolio of different solutions. Different businesses benefit from different ones, but we can save them money. We can get them tax credits. We can help them improve their performance. We can reduce costs, all ideally all done with no upfront cost. And in the best case, no load on the business owner. That's part of our mandate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. In the Champions Corner edition, I'm Mike Deaton, and together with Lydia, my co-host in life, business, and this podcast, we're taking you into the training room, deep in the dojo, sharing the secrets of what it takes to forge a champion. We're digging deep into mindset mastery, high-performance habits, best-in-class behaviors, and bringing you the tips and techniques that maximize human potential, brought to you from some of the best in the business.
So grab your buds and your seat. Hit subscribe and get ready to up your game. Let's do the show.
Let's do it.
Welcome to this In the Champions Corner episode of the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. Today we're joined by David Walters, a man with a story as fascinating as his expertise. Starting his career as a weapons engineer officer on a nuclear submarine during the Cold War, David's high-stakes background shaped his unique approach to problem solving and efficiency. From navigating the icy depths beneath the North Pole to being poached by the Canadian Navy for his specialized skills, David's career trajectory eventually led him into the corporate world. There he earned the nickname Project Hand Grenade, known for being a turnaround specialist parachuted into high-stress, failing projects to salvage them. Having rescued multi-million euro projects and led complex engineering feats, David made a pivot that would impact countless small and medium-sized business owners. Now he's dedicated to helping businesses streamline and thrive through done-for-you business process automation that requires no upfront cost. This episode's packed with insights on how to identify hidden efficiencies and automate mundane, time-consuming tasks, how to uncover substantial financial opportunities, such as unclaimed R&D tax credits, and leverage automation to increase productivity and profitability while reducing stress. David's approach is all about empowering business owners with the tools that deliver results before they even pay a dime for his services. Join us for this fascinating conversation about efficiency, AI myths, and how even the smallest changes can yield big results. Let's dive in the Champions Corner with David Walters.
David Walters, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. We're excited to dig into productivity and efficiency and all good things.
Yes, David, welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Yeah, you bet. Yeah, we like to start off just getting to know you a little bit. Why don't you give us a rundown on the 50,000-foot view or whatever of your entire life? Okay. Life didn't go through everything. So I've had a pretty eclectic career. I started off as a weapons engineer in nuclear submarines, and this was really at the peak of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And this is in the UK, is that correct? Yeah, the British Navy to start with. So obviously that sort of affects the way you think about life, the universe, and everything. I got headhunted by the Canadian Navy, and then after that, I went into the nuclear power industry as the emergency management consultant. Post 9/11, I had the only company in Canada licensed to provide armed security inside nuclear power plants. So that was a pretty high stress year or two. And then I went back into engineering and those sort of things. Ended up my corporate career working for a multinational engineering company. And over those years, I developed a bit of a forte for startup and turnaround. Probably the best job I did in the Royal Navy was refitting what's called an Oberon-class submarine, which is a 25-year-old diesel boat. But we actually shoehorned a nuclear submarine's tactical weapon system into a space about half the size and still managed to make it work. That was an interesting project. And then in the corporate world, I got the nickname of the Project Hand Grenade. So whenever a project had stalled or was about to fall off the table, I got dropped in to see if I could recover it. And so I had 2 or 3 departments that I turned around from failing. I managed to salvage a global IT implementation project. The company had spent 42 million euros on 3 projects. They were all struggling. They were all failing. I got parachuted into one of them and I managed to salvage it and got it delivered. But a very expensive lesson, but we met the normal metric for IT projects. 2 out of 3 don't deliver what the executives expect. I cut my teeth on corporate turnaround, corporate improvements. And then when I left the corporate world, I wanted to turn my passion and my skills to help small and medium-sized businesses. And that's where I've ended up today. Wow, fascinating. When you joined the Royal Navy, did you get education in the Navy or pre or post Navy? So in those days in the Navy, they had their own engineering college. So I did 3 years in the Royal Naval Engineering College. My majors were signal processing and underwater acoustics. Plus, I did the advanced degree in beer drinking and bar skiffles. Oh yeah, of course. That's mandatory core classes. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And then you said you were poached by the Canadian Navy. How does that work exactly? Like just from a nationality perspective, the Canadians were running the same class of submarine that I was serviced. I was actually quite unique because I started off nuclear trained and then I cross-threaded back to diesel submarines for that weapon system upgrade. Okay. So I was one of the very few number of people who was qualified on both nuclear and diesel submarines. Mm-hmm. The Canadian Navy was looking at upgrading their submarine fleet to a class that the British had called the Upholder class, which was effectively a diesel submarine propulsion system and a Trafalgar nuclear submarine tactical weapon system. So again, I was pretty unique in the fact I was qualified on both ends of the platform. And I went across there to be part of that project. That took about 5 years of not really making a decision, not moving forward. I left after 5 years and then went into the nuclear power industry for a bit of relaxation. Yeah. Okay. So I guess when you went over to the Canadian Navy, you were more like a civilian contractor or something. I was in uniform, so I had to get Canadian nationality and everything. Okay. But yeah, the Oberon class was used by about 7 or 8 different navies around the world. So it was not uncommon for people to go from one navy to another. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, fascinating world. I didn't serve or anything, so I'm not super familiar with the ins and outs of all of that. But I'm assuming, just to stay on this thread a little bit, were you deployed in submarines? Do you spend weeks or months or long periods of time? My longest ever patrol was 90 days dived. Oh, okay. And so I've been to the North Pole several times. Never seen it, but I've actually been there. Under it. Yeah. Under it, yeah. So that's... And 90 days in the steel tube does have an effect on you for sure. I can only imagine.
Wow. Am I understanding correctly? Are you based in Dallas?
I'm now in Dallas, yeah. I moved back to the US in 2010, and I've been here ever since.
And how did you end up in Dallas?
The global engineering company I was with, they moved me initially to New Jersey. Then after a few years there, I did a couple of years down in Belize. And then when my time in Belize was up, I moved back. The company had restructured and the sort of corporate center for the energy service group was now in Houston. So I moved back to Houston. Then when I left the corporate world, I remarried and my wife was living up in Dallas. So it made sense for me to come up here rather than her move down to Houston. So been a long journey, but I'm now, I think, where I'm intended to be.
That's wonderful.
I was born in Fort Worth, lived in Dallas-Fort Worth area most of my life until I did a brief stint in Romania where I met Lydia and we got married. And then we were in Plano for a few years until we moved here to Colorado in 2017. So very familiar with the area, but it has a near and dear place in my heart. Okay, so let's maybe transition a bit. You had good military career, a lot of experience, a lot of high-end experience, I would say. And then you were into some kind of global corporate environments. Yeah, IT projects. I worked for Nokia mobile phones, for Microsoft in regional and global roles. And I know these big global IT rollouts can be just horrendous. And yeah, everything moves on 6-month time intervals. And it was always frustrating. Late progress. Yeah, it was really, those kind of things are tough. How did you find your way into entrepreneurship and kind of I don't know if you call yourself a consultant or exactly how your service is, but we can get into that. Yeah, I've had my own businesses when I lived in Canada. And then when I left the corporate world, I restarted the business. And my passion has been to help small businesses. They are the backbone of the economy and they have a tough ride. So I thought with the experience I've got, with all the project success I've had over the past few years, I would like to help small businesses succeed. And I know your typical small business doesn't have a lot of money for business development, business improvement. So I was offering a series of done with you programs, helping them with their marketing, business processes, whatever. And after a couple of years of doing this, I found that about 80% of my clients hadn't got the results I thought they were capable of. And I got frustrated. I thought, okay, I know the programs we're offering are good. I know they work with other people. There's nothing wrong with the content. What was not happening was the implementation. And again, if we look at project management, 70% of projects fail because of poor implementation. So I realized that the way I was working with these small businesses was not giving them the best service. And when I did an analysis, it was predominantly because the business owner didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do what they needed to do to move the needle on the business. So I said, okay, I want to help them, but I can't help them if they don't do what they need to do. And obviously they don't have the money to pay me what would have been my corporate rates. So I looked for an alternative, and I found a number of different products and programs that we can actually help the small business owner benefit from with no load, no upfront cost, and they actually only pay when they get performance. That was a much more viable solution because there is no risk to the small business. If we have a program that fits, they can benefit from it before they take any burden, either financially or time-wise. So that's what we've done now. We've created a portfolio of different solutions. Different businesses benefit from different ones, but we can save them money. We can get them tax credits. We can help them improve their performance. We can reduce costs, all ideally all done with no upfront cost. And in the best case, no load on the business owner. That's part of our mandate.
I love that. It's a magnificent concept, and I can't add anything to how you narrated it. It makes a lot of sense. Are you targeting types of businesses or business owners, or is your methodology universal in its approach? Or
the methodology would work with any small to medium business. Some of the programs we are looking at larger size businesses. So one of the products is an accounts payable automation solution. So we actually can help a business automate their AP function so that it actually becomes a profit center, not a cost center. But to make that work, you need a minimum volume of $10 million a year in AP. So that would be for a sort of medium-sized company.
Mhm.
Smaller companies, tax credits are a very quick way. It's tragic how much money is available to small businesses that they just don't pick up on. 85% of the federal funding for small business R&D credits goes unclaimed every year. Now, people think, okay, I'm not a high-tech company. I'm not a R&D company. I'm not an aerospace company. But if you look at the rules, there are 40 different business categories, all of which are eligible for R&D tax credits. And they range down to clothing, apparel, cannabis use, industrial hemp. And my favorite one is beverages and brewing. So if you own a brewery or if you've got a microbrewery, you can actually claim an R&D tax credit towards making new types of beer. So that's got to be good.
Yeah.
So these are all things. But the thing is, the business owner is too busy running the business. They just don't see these opportunities. They're known by the R&D tax credit is a great one. There is one called workers' opportunity tax credit. Businesses that are bringing staff on typically are eligible for financial assistance if they bring people on from certain demographics. But normally they miss out on the opportunity because they recruit the person first, then say, I wonder if I can get some money. It's too late because you've already recruited them. So you're ineligible for the benefit for recruiting somebody from a minority group. So because the business owners don't know and don't understand, they're missing out on billions of dollars of funding that the government's laying there for them. I just heard that the R&D tax credit for this year was increased to $20 billion, but that shuts at the end of December. So if you haven't claimed it, it's gone for another year.
Yeah, it's true in many cases. We're small business owners. We have a real estate business. We have a real estate coaching business. And yeah, we're busy. Okay, we're not always in our business, but even when we're working on our business, it's not in thoughtful areas like this where we're investigating what the opportunities are. So it's a great service to be doing, especially in the way you present it.
I'll add to that. Not only do you not have the time, but often you don't have the expertise.
Sure.
And I'll give you a case study. One of our clients was an aerospace company. Now, they were more traditionally where you'd expect to be R&D tax credits. They had 3 engineers working on a redesign of one of the components. The CFO was tasked with claiming the R&D tax credit. So he did a very quick calculation. 3 people with this salary working 50% of the time, I can claim this much money.
And he said to the CEO, we can get about $17,000 for these guys. The CEO thought they should be able to get more than that. So they contacted us. We got them in touch with one of the R&D tax credit specialists who did a detailed analysis. And when they took in what's called the QA, the qualifying research expense, they worked out they're eligible for $68,000 of tax credit for that year. What gets even better is your tax credits can go back retroactively for the previous 3 years. And when you claim retroactively, the IRS will send you a check with interest for the previous 3 years' credits. And you can claim the future year's tax credit because the money that you've been accruing for next year's tax bill, you can immediately release because you've got this credit. So in that one case, because we did a detailed analysis, the total tax credit benefit went from $17,000 to $328,000.
Oh my gosh.
Now that's a big win for that
Yes.
company.
Yeah, that is incredible.
But staying on this thread just for a minute, if small business owners, they hear this, what are some tips that you give to them? How do they find out about these potential tax credits?
I offer a free service, which I call the Golden Nuggets Prospecting Call. And in 15 minutes, I can talk to a business owner and very quickly say, okay, you're eligible for this, you're not eligible for that, this is another one. And that takes 15 minutes. And then most of the calculators that we offer are free to use. So we can direct somebody to a website, they can run an analysis. If it then makes sense to them, we can help them get started. I'll tell you another one, which is going to be very lucrative. And this is more for the self-employed or the solopreneur. If you remember during COVID days, there was the PPP, the Payroll Protection Plan. And then the self-employed people pretty much got left out of that. There wasn't a lot of money for them. Subsequent to that, there has been a fund set up, which initially was called the Self-Employed Tax Credit. That is now available. It's only available to the end of this tax year. So on the 15th of April, 2025, this opportunity goes away. But anybody who was self-employed in 2020 or 2021, who was impacted by COVID or had dependents that they had to look after because of COVID is eligible for a tax credit up to as much as $32,000. Now, if you and your spouse were both considered to be self-employed and you were impacted by COVID and you've got dependents you're looking at, the family can claim $64,000. And working with our business process automation partners, they've created a completely automated portal that in 20 minutes, you can get an estimate, decide whether you want to take advantage of it, submit the claim, and there's a bank that's underwriting the program, they will advance you against the claim in less than 30 days. Now, unless you hear about that, there's a million people eligible. And last year when this program was announced, only 2% of the eligible people actually made a claim because they just don't know.
I also wanted to pursue this line of thought and maybe from a more, we can go theoretical or we can actually go practical, but let's just walk through a scenario from end to end. How would a small business or solopreneur, you touched on it, I think you teased on perhaps, but I'm assuming you do some form of intake with someone that reaches out and then a little bit of screening or filtering just to assess, is there something that I think I can help you with? But how does that work practically walking through?
That's a very simple 15-minute call with me. It's what I call a Golden Nuggets call. And within 15 minutes talking to the business owner, we can identify where the golden nuggets are. Obviously, I like to start with tax credits because that can very quickly get them cash in their hand, which nobody's going to turn down a cash injection.
No.
The next one is what I call the BPA, the business process automation. Most of us have inefficiencies in our business. Most of us are wasting time doing repetitive, mundane tasks.
Yes.
And one of the problems, and I've seen this myself, if you go for any of the typical ERP systems, even if you use those systems that are more designed for the SMB market, you can still be looking at $30,000 to $50,000 in onboarding fees to get a consulting company or development company to implement and tailor the solution. So we've taken a different approach with our BPA partner. They will write a custom process automation unique to your business. And the way it works is we have a discovery call. You talk to the solutions architect. They will build the architect. They will design the automation. They'll build it. They'll give it to you. It's online, so it's a subscription service. And only when you are seeing benefit from that automation does the subscription then kick in. So everything is back-end loaded. So the business is actually getting benefit right from day one. Then the subscription kicks in. And in this case, what we typically see, I'm going to give you some examples. One of them was an agency that had 25 different clients.
every client had a very unique service. It was all bespoke. It was all custom. And this agency was using about 50 hours a month just preparing invoices. What they did was they just created one process, one automation that did the invoice calculation. That saved them 50 hours a month in development or agency fees. Another one was a company that had a sales team. The sales team were very good, but if you've used any of the traditional CRM tools, you'll notice you can spend a huge amount of time just feeding the beast. So they said, okay, the only thing we want to do is free up the time for the sales team, and can we automate the CRM function? So we created a single focused business process automation that took all the back end, all the admin load off the sales team, and their sales performance increased 330% in the first quarter. Now that's huge.
It is.
That is.
And it's because, again, the business owners, as you say, they're in the business, they're working in the, most of them don't have time to take ahead and say, how can I work on the business? How can we make this process better? Now, one of the things I would say is we don't normally offer business process development. So if you've got a lousy process and you ask us to automate it, we can, but it's probably not the best way of doing business. We'd rather you think through the process. We can coach you on optimizing the process before we automate, but there's huge opportunities there. And what we typically find is a rule of thumb, a business that does one automation will typically come back 2 or 3 more times because they see the value of, hey, I can automate my sales process, I can automate my accounting, all of those other functions. When you're saving the team time, especially the business owner, if you can give the business owner that time back to work on their business, it becomes an exponential growth for them.
Yeah, this is great. It's really, I don't want to say revelatory because it may not be, but just thinking as a business owner, there are so many times where I come from a strong process. I was in operations, supply chain. My early days was quality and process engineering. And so I just think in very structured. I like to optimize processes and things, but in today's world, I can have a vision and I can think, oh, this could be done better in a certain way, but I don't necessarily have or want to take the time to learn how to integrate 2 or 3 different systems, or it's doable. I tell Legit all the time, I'm like, I could do this, but I'd have to spend hours doing a little bit of research, troubleshooting, figuring all this stuff out. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to pony up for a consultant or somebody to come in and do the work up front. And I don't even know the result I'm going to get. And so I love the way that you have crafted a win situation to where it's like, hey, we'll come and do the work. You get the benefit. Then we'll start to do, and we can get into this in a little bit. I'd like to understand how if there's a standard way, maybe you tailor this on the back end, but how you arrange your profit sharing, revenue sharing, or pay on performance, as you call it, the thing. But yeah, I love the concept. It's approachable and friendly for small to medium business owners that are typically lean, cash strapped, maybe even underwater a little bit because their processes are not in good shape or automated and things like that. But yeah, so maybe let's just dive into, is there a typical or even a standard pay on performance, or do you also, it depends. So if we're talking specifically about the BPA process, which is really, that's our Vanguard product, the tax credits we would look at first, can we get you some quick cash to give you a break, to give you some money that you can then reinvest in the process improvement? So that will be the first step. If we can, then great, we get them the money, they've got some free cash flow, they can then start to reinvest into the longer term improvement process. Then I don't think there's a business out there that doesn't have something that could be automated and optimized. So then the next thing we offer is the BPA, the business process automation. That typically comes from a conversation. Where are you most frustrated? Where are you spending the most time doing repetitive, mundane work that you just hate doing? And would you like it if we could automate that for you? And typically the answer is, I hate this, please, yes, let's get started. So based on that brief, we then arrange for one of the solution architects to talk to the business owner. They can then understand and we try and automate the existing process because, as we discussed, projects have a 2 out of 3 failure rate due to poor implementation. So it's much better to automate an existing process so we don't have the resistance from the staff or the team to adopt a new program, adopt a new product. Now, as I said, but to that is, if the process is bad, it's not in your interest to allow us or to ask us to automate a bad process.
Right.
Well, you really want to think about this before we automate. But assuming the process is working, assuming everybody's happy with it, the solution architect will work with the business. We will design the process. If the business owner's happy, we will then use our automation tool to create the automation for them. And this is a subscription service. So we actually host it on AWS. They can then use that tool. We give it to them in the business. They start to get the benefit from it. And then a couple of weeks after they've been using it, we'll connect with them, say, are they happy with the product? Are they happy? And if they are, then the subscription payments kick in. The subscription is obviously dependent on the complexity of the process automation we do, but also we want to take as much of the risk off the business. So not only do we not start until they've got some benefit from it, but the minimum contract length, we try and keep it as short as possible. Obviously, we've got to cover our development costs, our implementation costs. So we keep the back-end contract as short as possible. But typically, once a business has tasted the promised land of automating all this stuff, they will stay for 10, 15, 20 years. Because why would you give up something that is now making your life so much easier and is positive? And as a rule of thumb, somebody that has one automation, once they see the value, will come back 2 or 3 times over their life. Yeah, it's great.
I do have a quick question. Does your company also offer coaching on how to set up healthy processes?
We can do, that's not our core business, but if a business owner is really struggling, we can arrange for them to have business process coaching and consulting. But as I said, it's not really our core business. We would much rather take an existing system that's working and then automate it to get them the benefits. Because for them, we're going through an upfront cost. It's okay, you could spend several months for a consultant. Whereas if we say, what do you want to automate? Do it quickly, get them the benefits, and then they're into positive, they're revenue positive as quickly as possible. Smaller businesses, maybe, I'm not super familiar with that, but I do empathize with your statement about larger companies and departments are super resistant to any process changes because it's just this is how we've always done it. Why would we change something? Yeah. So that can be a daunting task to come in and retool a process. But if it needs it, yes, it's better to automate a better process than to automate a bad process. Are you guys leveraging, I'm assuming, some AI features and tools? I was just thinking about your example a minute ago where you were talking about CRM management and sales calls or something. I was thinking with all the note takers that could be like, okay, there's an AI note taker monitoring Zoom calls or whatever. And then that somehow automatically feeds the CRM to cut down on time. That's a very good point. And one of the things for the past 18 months, I've really been trying to, I connect with a lot of AI experts and AI developers. To be honest, I have not found an AI tool that really gives you practical real world benefit for the business process. So for example, I use ChatGPT every day and I have it on my phone. So I'll talk to my phone and say, I want to create a report about this subject. And I'll just narrate it to it. I'll then go to my desktop. It will then upload the information. I'll tell it to prepare me a quick draft and then I'll, use it as it's supposed to be as a chat. Okay, I like the draft. Let's change this. Let's research that. So using it as a thought tool and the chat GPT is actually the user interface to help me go through that thought process. But I've worked with other clients trying to help them with implementing AI into their business process. So one of my clients, she runs a virtual employee company. She's got 900 employees in the US, and every day they're required to send in a close of business report. Now, it's at the point it's impossible for her to read every one of these close of business reports. And so we said, okay, let's use AI. Let's see if AI can read all these email reports and then come up with sentiments. And that being the case, the cost of doing the AI was so much that it made no sense for her. So what I'm saying is use the AI for marketing, content, research, all that good stuff. But unless you're in a manufacturing or a business where you've got a lot of pre-existing data and putting the AI on top of your existing data set, I have not yet found a use case where it really is applicable to the smaller size businesses. I'm sure that will come and there's more custom off-the-shelf AI solutions that have been created. But at the moment, I don't think AI is living up to the hype for the smaller businesses in that operational. So certainly content marketing, sales analysis, all of that good stuff. But in actually getting it to do something in the real world, I have not yet seen a solution that I would put my hand on my heart and say to my clients, this is the one you really want to use. Yeah, it's very, intelligence is a broad term that we tag on a lot of these large language models, which
seem intelligent because they're able to just to quickly and with a large volume aggregate and pull out, extract a lot of relevant data. So it feels like there's an intelligence there, but yeah, it's very dependent on the programmer and the prompt that you put into it, that you're very precise. I like that thought process of it being very chat related. I've witnessed several people who do that, verbally speak back and forth with the chat. I've gotten myself trained to do that. I'm still very typing on the keyboard going in, but I love it when I see it. I'm like, oh, I should do more of that.
Yes. So obviously there is like a right way to use artificial intelligence and the wrong way. And to your point, I guess we're still waiting to see the developments, which I can only imagine is going to be tremendous development that is going to happen in this realm.
You're absolutely right. And then going back to my old-fashioned engineering days, I still classify it as a to D to A problem. So going from the analog world to the digital is where the first stumbling block occurs. And then from the digital back to the analog. And this is where the BPA actually could be opening the gate. So if we do a business process automation, we've now addressed the A to D, D to A function. So now everything we need to look at is now being digitally handled. Then we can put an AI tool on top of that, on top of the BPA. And now we're beginning to make something for a small business that actually not only helps them get more understanding and more intelligence on top of their process, but it gives them the ability to take the process from the physical work. And I talk to AI, you take your entire digital data sets and dump it here, and AI will. Most businesses are still doing stuff on paper. It's very few businesses that are 100% paper free. I'm not, and I'm trying to advocate for that. So if half your process is still on bits of paper, AI doesn't have a chance.
Go ahead.
So that A to D to A function, which the BPA actually gives you, is a great way to get us, especially a smaller business, to help them dip their toe in the AI game without overwhelming them or without giving them crazy, stupid results that don't help them.
Yeah, I think larger companies are obviously, maybe not obviously, but they are more capable to fund and inject projects. Conversely, AI companies are obviously going to target larger. So it'll take it a while to cascade down. And that's where people like you and others have a role to be able to help translate that. I was trying to, as you were speaking about that, I was trying to remember when I first heard the paperless office come about. That was some 20 years ago or something. I don't know. There was this, it's going to be a paperless office soon and stuff. We haven't quite made it there yet. I've got my notebook right here.
Hard to get rid of old habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to pivot just a minute. There's a topic you mentioned: 2/3 or 70% of IT projects failing, or not IT, but project failing because of, as you termed it, I think, just poor implementation. Why do you think that is, or what have you seen in your experience? Because it is quite common, and I'm sure there's no one answer, as with most things. I hate the binary framework of things, but where do you see most of them going wrong? You touched on one, I think, as far as, you didn't phrase it like this, but companies or teams or small businesses not having appropriate resources to implement things. But where do you see things just going bad?
So in my mind, there's probably three major reasons why these projects tend to fail.
Mhm.
One of them is a lack of direction from the executive. Because we're not good at change. We hate change. We always default to our comfort zone. And so if somebody says, we're going to bring you a brand new system and everybody's going to do it, and this is it from today onwards, we will resist. So, and that resistance to change can manifest in two ways. And I saw them both, and I was on the receiving end of both in my IT role. One of them is they just won't use. So you try and give them all the bells and whistles. It's too much. It overwhelms them. And they can't get in. They can't make any sense of it. So after the first, I'm better off using my pen and paper. At least I've got stuff done. And the other way is to say, okay, my existing Excel spreadsheets tied to a Google Word doc tied to this ad hoc way that we'd made something that worked. They got complete ownership of it and they refused to let it go. And I've seen this happen on several occasions where the business had made something that sort of worked. They then had the opportunity to implement a world-class platform. But in implementing it, they reconfigured the platform to emulate the old inefficient way that didn't work anyway.
Yeah.
And I've seen this 2 or 3 times. And by the time you finish, you've got a huge amount of cost,
for no benefit. And in one case, it was a SAP installation that the company spent. So they spent millions of dollars to reconfigure SAP to do the way they'd always done it. 10 years down the road, when SAP upgraded to SAP HANA, they couldn't be upgraded because they'd made so many changes. They were no longer supportable. And to go to SAP HANA, they had to pay another gazillion dollars to undo all the changes so they could then get the latest update. So that's one of them. And I've seen one of the project teams we worked with, the CEO said, as of next Monday, this is our project management tool and all the PMs will be using it. So there was no going back. And we found some champions who said, yeah, we want this, we do. So we got some champions, they became the expert users, and then they trained the rest of their team. So that was a successful implementation, but it was from you will be using this platform as of next month. So there was a leadership there to make it happen. The other thing we did, because most of the modern platforms are very configurable, we can get them to do everything, which is probably the worst possible thing you can offer to a team as you're about to onboard them. So what we said is, okay, we are not going to I was hated because I was that damned English guy that just said no. I said, you can have anything you want in 16 weeks when you've been using it, so you actually know what you need to ask for. And I just said, no, you're not having any of these changes until you know what you're talking about. And so we went, rather than giving a group all the bells and whistles to try and sell it on all the shiny objects, we said, no, we're going to give you the most simple, fundamental, basic product, the minimally viable product. And all we are looking at doing is getting user adoption. And if I could get 80% user adoption in a work group from a very simplistic model, I got the onboarding, I got the buy-in, and then when they knew what to ask for, I could give them all the bells and whistles because I knew they were asking for something sensible. And I knew that when I did give them the upgrades, they were actually going to use it. So again, the psychology of human behavior was much more important than the technology of the IT platform.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before you mentioned SAP, I was already thinking about implementations that I've been a part of where the leadership says, hey, we're making this switch, we're going to SAP. The implementation team comes in and workshops, and immediately we are trying to figure out how to make it like we used to work. Or this whole thing is the nightmare, bringing me back to these principles.
I didn't need to take you back to your trauma.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna
try to block it.
I'm gonna process it. It's been a long time, so it's very remote and residual back there, but many people have stories like that. Yeah, it's interesting. I like your 3 points. A lot of times it is a lack of clarity on what the finished product is. We think we want something and we're not really clear. Okay, this is success. This is what implementation looks like. Top-down leadership and management support, certainly another big one. And then, yeah, the team has to be on board for sure. And yeah, our tendency as humans, I think, is to overconsume, to grab all of the features as much as we can. And I like this approach of let's build the foundation first, get comfortable with that. And then, yeah, you can talk about, okay, what is lacking or what would you like to make things more efficient? Those are good. But yeah, that's an amazing statistic though, that over 2/3 projects fail. And we can probably quibble about what failure means. It's not necessarily catastrophic failures, but that can be quite can really make a lot of companies stumble if you're not getting things done. Absolutely.
Speaking of mindset, I'm curious in your experience in encountering all the business owners, small business owners or medium business owners, do you see that they look at AI as a friend or as an enemy?
Yeah.
I know it's a complex subject, but
Sorry, I understand someone calling in. Just say that question again about AI. Do they see it as
I was curious
friend or foe?
yes, do the people that you encounter, that you have experience with, business owners, do they see AI as a friend or they tend to see it as an enemy? How is that playing out?
I think so. The ones who are thinking the problem through, I think it breaks into several groups. There are the ostrich defense, those who stick their head in their sand. We never needed it in the past. We're not going to need it in the future. And I've always said, if you adopt the ostrich defense, you've got a major problem because you're leaving your butt sticking up in the air waiting for someone to come and pick it. So that's never a good plan. There are then those who said, yeah, AI is great, let's jump in, but they don't know why they want to use it. So they're going to waste a lot of time and effort. And then you've got the group in the middle. Again, this is 20% who are actually thinking through what they're trying to achieve. And as I said, for the small and medium-sized business that doesn't have a big data set, I have not yet found an AI tool that I would really recommend to my clients. And I think it's going to come. And as I say, I think the BPA, this is maybe the first step. Help the businesses get some automation and then drop the AI on top to improve the decision making based on that automation. But I've not seen a completely accessible tool that I would want to recommend to a small business. But by the same token, I'd say to everybody, if you're not getting into AI, you are going to be in trouble. You have to join the game. How you do it and how quickly you do it. But if you try and ignore it, you will just be left behind me. When I'm creating documents, when I'm writing SOPs or briefs or whatever, using my little ChatGPT shortcut, I'm probably reducing the time it takes me to produce a report by at least 80%. So I'm now 4 times more, or potentially 4 times more productive. And one of the other things I heard is AI is not going to take your job. The person who knows how to use AI is the one who's going to take your job. And I'm 4x more productive simply because I talk to ChatGPT on my iPhone. That's not difficult. It's just the application. How do we leverage the application?
Yes.
So it's a good observation. Yeah. There are some jobs that AI probably will be able to replace, but definitely it's the adopters that it's just when automation for manufacturing comes in, right? It's okay. The widget worker is replaced, but maybe for every 5 or 10 of those, there's an engineer that's needed or a maintenance technician or somebody that can work on the automation. So the jobs change and maybe there are fewer of them because we are more productive, but that typically opens up more opportunities somewhere else. It's just being able to be aware of those and seize on them. Absolutely. This is great. So I love this. I'm hooked. So maybe as we wrap this up, who do you want to reach out to you and how do they go about doing it? Okay. I would love to speak to any small, medium-sized business owner that would like to improve their business. And as I say, my 3 key points, we can save them time, remove bottlenecks and increase profit. So that they can either contact me very simply by email, David@BLE Services, and the URL's up there, or they can book a call with me online. And I'm happy to have that 15-minute golden nuggets call and see what we can help them do. We all want some golden nuggets. So that'd be great. We'll also get those in the show notes. So anybody that wants to see them, and then maybe just flipping that a little bit for anybody out there who is doubting or is reluctant, is there something you can do to motivate or help them to change their mind and say, or I should reach out? What I would say is just think about a day in the life of, think about your normal business day. What is it that you hate doing most of all? Is it repetitive? Is it tedious? Is it something that you know you have to do, but would love to not have to do it? Think what that is, and then let me know, and I'll tell you if I can take that pain away from you. All it takes is a painless 15-minute exploratory call. Absolutely. All right. David, thanks for coming on the show. Do you want to wrap us up?
Yes, we like to end each episode with gratitude. So we want to ask you, who are you most grateful for that has been instrumental in your life and in your journey and where you are today?
Okay. That's a daunting phraseology. It doesn't have to be who you're most grateful for. People that are, she does that to me all the time. What is your most things? I will tell you this. When I was a young sailor, these were 25-year-old submarines, everything. We had the first totally voice-controlled submarines. I could sit in the ship control seat and I would shout at somebody and they would run off and do something and then they'd shout back to me. It's a complete voice control. But we were in the Northern Fleet exercise areas. So we're trying to start a diesel boat. You have to run the engines every day to charge the battery. We were in very heavy seas, like force 12 Cs. It was a terrible job trying to keep the submarine on station so we could run the diesels. And you have to pull a vacuum in the submarine because the atmosphere becomes toxic over the 24-hour period because you use up all the oxygen. It fills up with carbon dioxide. So you run the engines to pull all the foul air out the boat. Then you open the flap valve so the fresh air comes rushing in. And you go, oh, that's charming. That's wonderful. But you have to pull this vacuum. And if you pull too much vacuum, obviously it can get dangerous. So we were in there, we were in this really bad sea. I was having a really tough time keeping the submarine stable. And everybody was starting to do this and squeeze in and eardrums were popping. And what I'd done is I was looking at the barometer and the barometer was red, yellow, green. And you're supposed to snort in the green. And if you touch the yellow, that's fine. But if you go into the red, you have to stop snorting. we had lost, in submarine parlance, we call it losing the bubble. So you don't know where you go and you don't know what the submarine's doing. We'd pulled so much vacuum, the barometer had actually done a full 360. So I was in the green, but I'd gone round the clock once and everybody was feeling this. And the captain came out and said, "No, this isn't right. Stop snorting." So we did the stop snorting drill and we watched the barometer and it wound itself round the clock. And I thought, I almost killed a whole submarine's worth of people. And I thought, oh, I'm really in it this time. And the captain just looked at me and said, "Dave, that wasn't very well done, was it?" And that was it, because he knew that I was beating myself up terribly.
We learned.
Yeah. Probably the greatest leadership example I've ever had. That guy was a great captain. But when you get the team self-motivated, that the team want to perform to the levels that you aspire to, you don't need to rant and rave. You don't need to shout. So that's probably the greatest leadership lesson I've ever had. I didn't want to kill a whole...
Sure, obviously.
Yeah. That very simple statement made the point, but also taught me how to react appropriately to the team when things do go wrong. And I think that's a lesson that will stick with me forever. So I'm grateful for Commander Nick Beadnell for that education.
I love that. That's also something I think that can be applied to parenthood and parenting. A lot of times we want to berate and to keep going on and on about things when the lesson has been absorbed and stuff. So that's awesome. Thanks, David. This has been enlightening, inspiring. I wish you all the best, because I wish all the small to medium business owners the best as well. As you mentioned, I also believe that's the foundation of, at least I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I know here it really does drive an engine of growth as much as we can. So appreciate what you do and appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. And yeah, wish you all the best going forward. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it. Thank you. Good. Thanks.
It was great to meet you.
My pleasure.
For those of you joining us today, we hope you enjoyed this time in the Champions Corner as much as we did. Got some awesome takeaways, and most importantly, will take action to continue living your best life and maximizing your potential. Mindset is such an important aspect of life, and when coupled with action, delivers undeniably powerful results.
Please subscribe to the podcast to hear from more great guests and get the latest mindset mastery insights and cash flow matchups.
Again, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast.